Hello everyone. Japanese bosses. Japanese bosses are very different from the bosses that I knew when I worked in corporate America. Previously, before coming to Japan, I worked for a Silicon Valley software corporation, and the bosses that I would describe there, if I had to give a simple way to describe them, I describe them as smiling executioners. And what I mean by that is the bosses that I saw and that I had were always smiling and friendly for the most part, always willing to help out, very encouraging, but all the while, every one of us knew that if we didn't perform right, or we didn't meet expectations, or bring in enough revenue for the company, that our jobs were on the line. And indeed, the company that I worked for, the software company that I worked for, was very competitive and had annual rounds of firing where they would basically let people go. And this was basically done with a smile on their face for the most part. So the image of a smiling executioner kind of comes to mind. Boss is not necessarily a friend. It's someone there to kind of push you, to prod you along, to help you out as necessary. But if things don't quite work out, here's your walking papers. That's what I knew in the United States. Now here in Japan, things are very different. Japan has a culture of lifetime employment, although that's beginning to change, although it still is, for the most part, the dominant ideal for Japanese employees. They basically expect to get hired by a company and spend their working life at that one company. As a result, the threat of getting fired is not as significant as it is in North America and perhaps in other parts of the world. I can't speak to those, I don't know them as well. But in Japan, you don't worry so much about getting fired. What you worry about is not advancing. You worry about not getting that good promotion, or not receiving the benefits that come along with advancing age. Japan is an age-based advancement culture where basically you rise in the corporation sometimes more by age than by ability. But so you don't have to worry about getting fired as much. But so therefore, how does a boss, what weight, what leverage can a boss use in Japan to bring their employees to toe the line and to get them to work hard? And the word is for that matter is discipline and shame. There's two words for actually, discipline and shame. Japanese bosses are disciplinarians. They are quick to respond when someone is falling off of the expected path, and they're quick to shame if someone is not performing as expected. Very, very different from what I've ever experienced in the States. For example, in Japan, it's not uncommon for a boss to publicly reprimand, but dare I use the word humiliate, an employee in front of others. And I've seen this happen where I've been in a crowded room with all of my coworkers, and our boss has stormed in and basically given an employee a lecture, very abusive. Abusive isn't the word. Abusive from a North American perspective, perhaps, but a very vocal and loud dressing down. And that has the effect of causing shame. And shame is a driving force in Japanese culture. I can almost say that it's the glue that binds things together. It keeps people operating the way they're supposed to work. So in Japan, whereas you don't have to worry so much about getting fired for not doing a good job, you do have to worry about being disciplined, and you do have to worry about possibly suffering the effects of being shamed in some way. And the picture's coming out a little more negative than I intended. It's not quite like that. It's more like the image of a Japanese boss is more like that of a father, a loving father. That's the word that I need to add. A loving father. This is generalizing, of course. It's not all cases. But for the most part, a Japanese boss is a loving father who is basically looking out for your well-being, but isn't afraid to tell you off from now and then, and maybe even yell at you once in a while. And if you watch the Japanese animated show Sazae-san, you'll see the father, Sazai's father, always yelling at Katsuo. Now that image, my wife once told me, she said, that's his job, that's his role, you know, that he's to be yelling like that, to be getting mad, and to basically bringing the family in line. Japanese bosses are very much like that as well. And I've seen it firsthand many, many times, and it's a very stark contrast to what we experience in the West, particularly in North America, where I've had spent half of my working career. So I just wanted to point that out. You know, these are generalizations, of course. Your results may vary, and especially when comparing it to other cultures other than North American cultures. This is just my opinions, but I think that it's interesting, especially if you're going to come work in Japan and you're going to have a Japanese boss. It's interesting to keep that in mind. You might have to be able to understand the difference in the way that they handle their employees than what you might be familiar with from your country. So there you go. I'm going to get back to my lunch now. Hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about Japanese bosses. Take care. Bye-bye.